G'day guys, this episode is brought to you by Kratzmann's RV Super Centre out of Burpengary.
Burpengary, mate.
Mate, motorhomes and caravans, they're the only destination you need to go to. You don't need them for 40 years.
One-stop
they've been
shop.
selling. That's it. And you say to me, you want to tow a caravan somewhere? I just say go to Kratzmann. That's it. Now listen, don't miss, we're getting to the end of the year, financial year, so you've got roughly 21 days till this end of financial year sale is over. So pull your finger out. Go out to Burpengary. Give them a call. Kratzmann's Caravan. Tell them you love Kevie, you hate Dobbo, but you love Inside Ball.
Inside Ball's the go.
Inside Ball's the go. And look, they will look after you. They've got the biggest ever sale taking place at the moment, up to $20,000 of some new and used caravans and motorhomes. Not all of them, but there is up to 20 grand of them. Go out there, give them a call. Burpengary's a destination. Kratzmann's RV Super Centre out there at Burpengary. The best caravans, the best motorhomes. Mate, why would you shop anywhere else?
Okay, welcome to the Inside Ball special edition here with Chris Johns joining us, good friend of mine for a long time, played on a footy together, Johnsy. Welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks, mate. Great times.
When you got the hoppies on, that's your business, eh? Tell us about hoppies first up.
Hoppies, mate. Hoppies, well, you know, started it 20 years ago. So we've been going a while now, but really enjoy it, you know, working with people and cleaning cars. I've got, you know, dishpan hands and a lot of tyre shine under the nails, mate.
Right, mate. That's good. We'll get to that a little bit.
Oh,
Have you been to hoppies?
Oh, mate.
You lost your nuts at hoppies, didn't you?
Oh, let's not bring up that. That's a long time ago. It's a wonderful business. Let's not bring up that.
Listen, footy. All right, let's leave there. Two-time Premiership winner of the Broncos, 92, 93. 57 games for the Dragons. Now, you started your career at the Dragons, didn't you? 57.
Yeah, I grew up Harold Matthews Cup, SG Ball, went through all the junior ranks down there. I was actually born in Inaugural.
Right,
in Queensland here, in Brisbane. We moved down there at a very young age and grew up in the St George district. But I'm not on their Christmas card list, St George.
Why not?
Well, mate, the time they went to a grand final in 1984, I played in that game. We got beat 6-4 by Canterbury.
Right.
Then the next time St George were lucky enough to get to a grand final was 92, 93, and
Right.
I was lucky enough to be on the right side.
Yes.
And then the next time they finally got to a grand final, I was the
in
CEO,
99.
Yeah, CEO of Melbourne Storm. So yeah, they're not real keen with my input to that club.
So you don't walk through the Leafs Club there?
No, there's no love.
You
in
don't
there.
go to reunions?
I do. I love going to reunions down there. I haven't been to a lot, I must say, but I have been down to a few. And, you know, they've just got such a wonderful history, you know, like Billy Smith and, you know, Graham Langlands, or the late Graham Langlands. But, you know, you see, you know, Craig Young and Peter Wynn and, sorry, not Peter Wynn, he played for Parramatta, Graham Wynn. Yeah. You know, so it's always good to go there and just mix with the old blokes.
Right. Back on to the good stuff, Johnsy. The Broncos, 171 games. You're an inaugural player for them as well, which we'll speak about.
191 games.
191. Sorry, mate.
Yeah.
Must be a typo there. 9 games for New South Wales.
Yes, mate.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And then 14 games for Australia. I played for Australia with you. I obviously didn't play for New South Wales with you, but that was kind of awkward around training and that, wasn't it?
It wasn't awkward when you won. It wasn't much fun when you lost.
No, exactly, mate. Now, you did say you're born in Brisbane, then went to... How'd you end up in Sydney? What happened there? How'd you end up...
Oh, just my dad had a job opportunity to move down there, and we moved down there, I think it was about 5 or 6.
Right.
And yeah, you know, grew up in the St George area, the St George district, and playing for the Peakhurst Hawks.
Right. Did you ever contemplate playing for Queensland because you were born here for Origin?
Oh, mate, I didn't. You know, I never thought I'd get to play State of Origin, to be honest. You know, I thought, you know, that was for the elite. That was for, you know, the Wally Lewises and the bloody, you know, the Alan Langers and, you know, the Gene Miles and all those, you know, wonderful players that went before me. I never thought I'd be able to do that. But, you know, probably the best career move I ever had was moving to the Broncos and being able to be coached under Wayne Bennett and get into a situation where playing with so many wonderfully gifted players that, you know, it helped my game that much. I actually even got a start at Origin. It was great.
So, Johnsy, how did that happen? I mean, I remember when I used to collect that. They used to have the Scanlon's footy cards, the sticker cards, and I've got the 1986, and you're in it. You're in the St George. You're in the St George. So you had your career there, and you were from that that area. Yeah. And so how did that go? That when the Broncos happened, that they identified you because you were playing good first grade at that stage at the Dragons.
No, I had a really serious shoulder injury, kept me out for a year. You know, so I had time to reflect a bit and have a full season out. But to be quite honest, I was probably partying a bit too much at St George. You know, I like going out with all the young blokes and getting out to the nightclubs and doing all those things you want to do when you're a young fella, and probably got into a little bit of trouble down there. Nothing major, but just boys being boys.
Yeah.
And when my contract came up, Roy Masters was actually sacked.
Yeah.
So he was a bit dirty with the club, and he was best mates with John Rebo from his days at Western Suburbs.
Yeah.
And he actually rang up John and said, "Listen, John, got a young kid down here. He's bloody. I think he's going all right, but he's just got to pull his head in. He needs some discipline, And if you've got Wayne Bennett up there, I think it'd be the best career move we could have, getting out of this little bit of a rut he's got here at St George." So that year, 3 or 4 clubs came in. So there was Newcastle Knights, the Gold Coast, and Broncos, and I got an offer from Manly.
Manly, yeah, I was going to say Manly.
So there was 4 clubs. So I had a bit of a think, and I rang up I didn't have a player manager, but he was my accountant, and he worked out of Newcastle. I rang him up and I said, "Hey mate, I've got these 4 offers. Can you have a look at them for me and give me a bit of advice? They're looking pretty good." And I said, "Listen, Newcastle have offered me an RX-8 car and this amount of money, and Gold Coast have offered me this, and Broncos have offered me this. I don't really want to stay in Sydney." And he said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Oh, Gold Coast looks all right." and to his credit, my accountant said, "You're kidding me, aren't you? You're going to suggest you should go to the Gold Coast, and you're having all this strife down here at St George.
Yeah.
I think you should pull your head in, forget about the flash car at Newcastle, and get your ass up to Brisbane."
Yep.
And when I thought about it, geez, Greg Dowling, Colin Scott, Gene Miles, bloody Wally Lewis, Alan Langer. I thought, wow, what an opportunity to play with all these wonderful players, and that was the best move I've ever made in my career.
Coming up to go on, Dobbo.
So you come to Brisbane, and so am I right in saying that was you were part of the inaugural side when it started?
The first Broncos side, yeah.
You played against Manly. I remember that game, watching that game, as clear as clear. And it was pretty polarising. You wouldn't have known it, but the Broncos to start off with were a little polarising because the BRL had been so strong, and people didn't necessarily. Not all the diehards wanted to see the BRL, and then obviously these Broncos come along, but it only took that one victory, and it all changed. Can you remember that day against Manly? Oh, mate,
clear as a day. Clear as I'm sitting here now, It was just a wonderful, wonderful day. And, Manly had won the Premiership
the year before.
And, our side was a pretty handy side. And the old Lang Park, full to the bloody rafters. It was, just a wonderful atmosphere and a wonderful way to introduce the side to Brisbane. And I think on that day, they pulled out the old Powers
banner around
the banners around because they couldn't advertise. Because Bernie Power, it's a wonderful story. I think the biggest sponsorship in the day might have been Penfolds with St George, or Sydney Ford with the Roosters. It's probably $200,000, maybe $300,000 for a jersey sponsorship, and that's probably higher than what it was.
Yeah.
This bloke, Bernie Power, came along, didn't even have a beer, didn't even know anything. He was a rugby union boy, private school boy, didn't know anything about us, but got excited about what was happening and got excited about, brand new team in the New South Wales Rugby League coming out of Brisbane. I've got a beer that I want to take on Australia. And he said, I want to sponsor you. And he put in $1 million a year. It was $1 million in that first year, and he hadn't even brewed one can of beer. And he's putting up signs around the...
Huge.
And didn't it piss off the New South Wales Rugby League? Oh, my God. I think John Quayle and Ken Arthurson had heart attacks together. And I think there was a big please explain on the Monday, and all our boards were dragged in and saying, you do that again and it'll be the last game you play.
Well, from that day forward, though, Powers became a huge
part of you
part of the Broncos. Didn't
someone was saying to me today, we had this black jersey the other day that just came out, which I thought looked spectacular, and especially for the cause.
Yeah.
I think it looked really good. But I think today the biggest selling jersey for the and when they even put one out, a new one, is that retro style with the Power brewing for the
100%.
For the Broncos. The fans and the diehards, they love those Powers jerseys
and the colours as well for the Broncos jerseys. Magnificent, righto. Do you remember your first day at Broncos training? It must have been pretty daunting, rolling in. I mean, you'd played first grade already at the Dragons. Billy Noak was there with you.
Yeah, I'm lucky to remember my last training session at the Broncos, let alone my first. But no, I don't.
No, was it like with Wally Lewis and Gene, like you mentioned those guys, was it daunting for you walking in, or were you just sort of pretty confident young fella, happy to mix it with those blokes?
I've always been like a pretty hard trainer, and I thought what I've got to do is not say anything, not do anything. I've just got to get in here and train hard and train harder than anyone else there. And if you can do that, it puts you in a good position to be able to try and get a spot in the team. So, no, I was pretty quiet early days, just head down, arse up, and get in there and have a crack at training.
And so you went there for, one, to try and stay a bit more disciplined off field because you felt you were partying a bit, but also to play with some of the greatest players, wasn't it? That must have been enticing for you as well.
Oh, it was, Kevie, it was. And to be quite honest, another big factor was my parents had moved to Victoria and bought a pub in Victoria, and while I was at St George, so I didn't have my parents around. Another reason I was probably a bit loose around the bloody edges.
Yep.
And when they heard I was thinking about going to Brisbane, they said, "Listen, if you go to Brisbane, we'll buy a pub." So I said, "Well, Dad, I'll go halves." So we come up here and we bought the Sportsman Hotel.
Oh, the Sportsman, right.
Up there in Spring Hill.
Dobbo's been thrown out of that a few times.
Couple of times. Yeah. How'd that go? Hey, Johnsy, I'm not going to say the Bronx underachieved for the first few years because they obviously we all know what happened when they first won their comp in 92 and 93. But those first few years, it looked like that side could have at different stages really won the comp, and there was some hard decisions had to be made. How was it?
They were acutely aware of that. Like Wayne was acutely aware of that. But really, from the start, the 5 directors, like what wonderful people. You had Paul Morgan, who was like a bigger stockbroker. He just bloody floated Crocodile Dundee and done a whole host of different things, and was the talk of the town. Really powerful businessman. You had Gary Balkan, who bought the 2 Kookaburra Queens for Expo. You had Barry Miranda, who was in real estate and a high-profile businessman. And you had the young Steve Williams, who was heavy into marketing and just starting up in his business career. But really 4 high-powered businessmen. And it wasn't like St George where the old Blazer Brigade had come in. And the only reason you're in there because you've been the longest serving. This bloke had been there for 70 years, so he had a blue blazer. This bloke here was 60 years. He had special badge on his blazer. It was, it was a real Blazer Brigade. Yeah. Where here, this was about business. Yeah. This was about if you don't succeed, we'll be getting rid of you, and we'll find someone that can do it. Which is what happens in business. Yeah. You don't.
Good lessons to learn as well.
Great lessons, and it was really good for me as learning, on how to be successful. But. So they said, if you don't win, we've got to win a premiership here in our first 5 years, right, to make our mark here in Queensland. Otherwise, everyone will be talking about us bowing out of this competition. So there was a lot of pressure in those early days for that first 5 years. So at about the year 3 mark, and that when did you come in, Kevie?
I came in 1990, so I was there 2 years. So
2 years, yeah. So that 93 mark,
we made the finals in 90.
Lazo,
91 we missed out, didn't we?
Yeah, but that 93 was a big year, where the John Rebo, they were all under pressure. The coach was under pressure, and one of Benny's favourite sayings were coach killers. You blokes are coach killers. We got to do better than what we're doing.
Can I say, I always, and it's a great lesson, and I say this with you here, Kev, that the pressure, 90 and 91, there was a lot of pressure, but somebody came out from the club and said, Wayne Bennett is our coach. We are not sacking him. And once...
That was Paul
Morgan said that no matter what, we are not sacking Wayne Bennett. And 92, you win. And 93, that kind of confidence, not a lot. It doesn't happen a lot in NRL now. Like, you never see a CEO or ownership come out and just... Because normally if they say that, it's the death knock, but that was a genuine... Paul Morgan said... He is our coach, and we're not. Did that change? And you were part of this, Kevin and Johnsy. Did that change? Because 91, like you guys, I think you failed that year. I think that's you could have won that comp that year because you fell off a cliff at the back end. But 92 was a different story completely then.
I think there was a really important signing at the end of 91, wasn't there?
Glenn Lazarus.
Yeah, the big fella, the brick with eyes.
You reckon that changed things?
He turned the whole team, mate. Turned the whole club, He come and it wasn't just him coming. I think it was the stage of those younger players that were just starting to grow into their old boots. The Greg Dowlings had gone, and the
Wall
Mark
had
Holmes
gone.
were coming through. Wally had gone. And that's probably one of the biggest decisions that no club, there's not one club in this game that would have the guts to do that, to sack Wally Lewis and get rid of him, knowing that they had to evolve. We had to get a new breed of players in that can to carry the torch and get us a step closer to that grand final. And, when bringing in Lazo and the Alan Cairns and, Terry Madison.
Gilly arrived in 91 as well, Trevor
Gilmeister. So the whole dynamic of that pack, and we used to joke and call them the pop gun pack, because they weren't the biggest and brave, or they were the bravest, but they weren't the biggest in the league.
Lazo added that size, though, didn't that we needed, and that presence in the middle of the field.
And the carry forward, mate, the bloody impact, the penetration, I'm just digressing a bit and we'll only go off it quickly, but just what they've just done to Cherry Evans, I can't believe that, that forward pack was one of the most inept forward packs I've ever seen for Queensland. They just had no penetration, they had no intent. You could have had the best halfbacks that the Queensland have ever had in that side in that game, and they wouldn't have been able to do much more than Cherry Evans did. So, what happened is our pack really went to another level. And, we had a wonderful backline, it was Steve Renouf and, Kevie and bloody Alf. And, we had some really wonderful players in there, Willie Kahn and Mick Hancock. It was a great backline. But to get that forward pack that could finally give us a really good platform to do what we do best, it really started to happen in 92, and we, did it well.
We did it well. Righto, let's go back a bit. Your Origin debut, 89. What do you remember most about that?
Mate, the biggest thing I remember about that was Jack Gibson was the coach, right? And it was towards the end of Jack Gibson's coaching era. But, there was they picked a pretty, they 5 debut people. There was myself, Laurie Daly, Ricky Stewart, Glenn Lazarus, and Bradley Clyde. They were 5 brand new players come into for that first game.
Fair 5.
Yeah, we got beat 36-0 or 36 something. They flogged us, right? They flogged us.
That was
Wally Lewis absolutely just
went to town.
And I remember because we had the great Terry Lamb was in our side against Wally, and I think it was a lot easier for me, right? Because I was training with these blokes every day. These blokes were,
just normal,
tipping beers on my head and bloody, mucking around and, and being really aggressive when you didn't do the right thing on a football field, but giving you a cuddle when you've done the great things on football. All these wonderful players. I think that first team, they were starstruck. They're New South Wales side. Like all the younger players, Wally Lewis. And I was sort of like saying, mate, stop looking at him and give it to him, because
you'd work and trained with him,
train with him every day. He's just like us, just bash the prick. But I think we were a little bit in awe in that first game. Second game, we bring in a bloke by the name of Chris Mortimer, who I still rate as probably one of the toughest footballers in the game. He's the story's a legend about him playing with steel pins in his hands and playing injured and just doing whatever it takes to win a football game. Well, he came in and he turned that whole team around. All of us young fellas and even all the older fellas looked up to Louis. And Louis, we went within a bee's dick of winning that second game, and when we were really competitive in the third game. But their side was just so good. But Chris Mortimer just taught us all a lesson in, hey, go out there and have a crack, and anything can happen.
Yeah, well, you played all 3 games that series, didn't you?
Yeah.
And Kerrod was part of that too, my brother. So that was his Origin debut as well. Was it funny playing against your teammates for Origin? Awkward?
No, not awkward, because I couldn't, I'm just, like when you're playing tennis, you're playing against someone you don't know, it's right. You're playing against your best mate, you really want to win. And you want to be,
good.
Get out there and have a crack. So I think, playing against those boys, I think the funniest one was when, like, Jed and GG were playing against us, and I've gone through, and Jed's nearly taken my head off with a swinging arm, clipped me, laid me out flat. And GG's looked up at Jed and said, "Jed, what the hell are you doing? That's Johnsy." He said, "Fuck Johnsy." Fuck, he's wearing that jersey. He's going to cop it.
I love it. I love that.
Yeah,
and that's what made Origin so powerful. I don't know if it has that. I mean, it's still very much aggressive, but it doesn't have that, like, where they want it, they don't care. Like, they all laugh after games. It was never like that. I mean, Origin's a spectacle now, but it doesn't have that kind of ferocity where it didn't care if you were mate versus mate.
Yeah, I disagree a bit, Dobbo. I don't think you're seeing it as much, because they are, like, joking around in there. And the hardest thing about playing State of Origin, once you play for Australia, you're playing with those blokes. When you're playing for come back and play State of Origin, it is hard to hate someone.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think that hate's there. Well, I think there is a few of them out there. I think Spencer Luo. I think he's a bit old school. I think
he's a throwback.
You can't put that cap on him.
and what's Gordy doing? Like peppering him. Tell him, like, come on, Gordy.
Yeah, hey? We don't need to unleash him.
Trying to pull him on, which is Origin, I suppose, isn't it? You know,
yeah,
would you have kicked it? Would you have kicked the ball to Lenu?
No.
Good. I agree with you. No. Don't poke the bear, Dobbo. Don't poke the bear, mate.
That's what when I used to play against Mal, I'd give a bit of lip to players and you'd do a few things, but the last thing you wanted to do to Mal is to stir him up. Just want to let him go and just try and get through the game without him getting cranky.
Exactly, mate. Now, before we get to 92 in the Premiership year, you went overseas, didn't you? You played a bit of in the off season to Barrow.
Yeah, Barrow.
Rod Ready?
Yeah, I got a phone call from Rocket, and I'm trying to think how I got out of that because the Broncos didn't want to let me go, but I ended up convincing them to let me go over there. Yeah, that was a wonderful experience. My Leisha and I just got married, and we got on a plane to go over to Barrow.
That was your honeymoon. Play rugby league.
Honeymoon, yeah. And Barrow had stuffed up all the customs stuff. So once we arrived in England, we were at the airport for 24 hours while they were trying to fix up the passport. I finally get out of the airport. There's no one there to pick us up. So we've organised a bloody cab, which was a couple of £100 or something. We get to where we're staying, and Lisa started crying because you could see the mould on the roof and the doors were leaking. And I've had enough. So I've got Rocket's phone now. I said, Rocket, where are you, mate? No one's there to pick me up at the airport, blah, blah. He said, mate, I got the sack last night. So I'd gone all this way over to England, and Rod Reddy, at St George, I'd known him, a wonderful bloke and a wonderful coach.
He'd been sacked. So how did it go when you got over there? Did it all get sorted out?
It did, mate. It did. It was only in those days you used to only do like a 10, 12 week stint. So played about 10, 12 games. Just made sure I bloody had a crack, and I got to know the coach, and it was
went well. Can we talk about 92? I've asked Kev about it, but this premiership, the first ever premiership, what's your memories of that season and that actual experience? Because it's different for everyone.
Mate, it was unbelievable. I remember just going back to the St George grand final. I played in the reserve grade grand final because it was my first game back after 14 weeks with my shoulder. So I played in the reserve grade grand final and we won that. And then I came on for 25 minutes in the first grade grand final. And, 6-4 was close. We nearly got there in the end, but we got beat. But I remember going back to the Leagues Club and we're standing around and there's Craig Young and Graham Wynn and all these grown men, and they're nearly crying. And I'm looking at them, I said, what are you blokes doing? I'd just played for Penshurst RSL and Peakhurst Hawks, and we'd won 10 premierships straight, on junior footy. Yeah. You just think you play grand finals. But these grown men were just so disappointed. I said, mate, we'll get another one next year or the year after. What's wrong? And they looked at me as if I was an idiot and said, mate, you don't realise how many few opportunities you get to a grand final and then to try and win one.
Yeah.
Sometimes it never comes around. Most players it never comes around for. And then 92, I got that, because I went from 86 to 90, all those years in the wilderness.
Yeah.
And then to get to a grand final with your best mates, and you're there and you're thinking, we're not letting this slip. We've got to make sure we nail this one.
You already had the grand final experience, so do you reckon that helped you or didn't affect anything in any way?
Oh, definitely helped. They always used, in the old days, you'd say you got to win one to lose one. But I just think, the older you get, the more special that, things are going. Like if you're 17 or 18 and playing in your first grand final, you probably think you're going to play in 10.
Well, we didn't quite get that many, but we had a pretty good run. What about coming back to Brisbane? I got great memories of that. Is there anything... Do you remember that coming back? And
yeah, well, mate, you and Alfie just stole the show, mate. You were like buddy Beetle 1 and Beetle 2.
Oh, we were just he was the man.
We were just the security guards, just clearing everyone out of the way for you. But yeah, the reception was phenomenal. I can always remember sitting on that stage and you and Alf bloody, crowd surfing and.
Well, I didn't crowd surf. Alf and Lazo was doing all that stuff, but it was great, right? Then we're off to England for the World Cup, right? Then after that grand final. And then I gave you one of the best passes you've ever had. I hope we can find vision of this.
Dean Bell.
Do you remember that?
Dean Bell. I've got Dean Bell's tattoo somewhere on my head here somewhere.
Yes, well, You got to take the good with the bad sometimes, John.
Yeah. No, the only thing is, I don't know if I got knocked out because I can remember as you threw the ball, I can remember you going, "Oh no,
oh, sorry, Johnsy!" Bang. Dobbo. I felt really bad for Johnsy. He's lying on the ground. His eyes are rattling around in his head.
Big cross on it.
I've said sorry.
But
mate.
that's the best game, but Kevie. Like, can I tell a little story about
Yes,
that game?
you can.
That was one of the best things I've ever seen. Because in '92, right, we went on the World Cup tour. So all the Australian players, I was lucky enough to get picked, and with Kevie and that, we're all with the Australian team, right? So we were not training with the Broncos. So after we had our last commitment, we then flew into Manchester to play this World Cup game. Once we got there, all the forwards, they were all a bit different. And I'm looking at Gigi, and they're all looking real happy, and I'm thinking, what's going on? And I said, what's going on, Gigi? He said, mate, you wouldn't believe it. Benny's just given us absolute licence to absolutely rip these pommies' heads off. Because if you remember, in that '92, the English forwards came out and just
tried to poleaxe all the players.
Yeah, but they knocked out Brad Fittler's front teeth. And just really dog axe. Really hard school, old school dog axe.
Yeah.
So I remember in the dressing room before the game, Benny's there going, boys, you've got full licence. Get in there and do whatever you have to do. And if I see one bloke get hit, I want the lot of you boys in there and take control.
Yeah.
And like Andrew G's eyes are spinning. He's never heard this in his life. Gordon, bloody
Gavin Allen.
They're spinning. And I'm looking at Kevie going, whoa, what's going to go on here? So, right, they've come on. First half, there's been about 3 brawls and bloody people are getting thrown and kicked and belted. And we've come back into the dressing room at half time. Wayne Bennett's shaking and he's going, that's it, boys, no more. Oh, no more. I know what I said, but no more. We go back and play football. I don't want to see one more bit of dirty play.
Yeah.
And all the forwards went back on the field and just did what they did. And we actually were the first Australian side to win in England in a World Club Championship.
Yeah.
Wow.
I remember the kickoff when they just poleaxed Lazo. Lazo never gets poleaxed on a kickoff carry. But they picked him up and spun him around and
They were
threw him
tough
down.
boys.
Oh, yeah, the Wigan boys. They were good.
Last night I was lucky enough to call that Roosters-Canberra game, and the one thing that you see at Allianz Stadium is the big SwiftX sign.
Oh, how good.
SwiftX are a partner of the NRL, and guess what? They're now a partner of Inside Ball. I'll tell you what, NRL, Inside Ball, SwiftX, it all works as one. They've got over 450 cryptos on their platform.
Yeah, well, I'm a partner of
SwiftX now?
Yeah, I am.
You joined up?
I joined up, brother.
Good on you. And Bitcoin, Ethereum, Doge, it's all there. One thing SwiftX is the place to buy, sell, and learn about crypto.
I'm learning every day, Dobbo.
It's unlike you. You're not a very fast learner.
I'm a good learner, mate.
Oh, you are. Sorry, you are. SwiftX is the place to go to. Join 850,000 Aussies and kick off your crypto journey today. It's that easy with SwiftX. And you know what? If you join today, $20. $20 a Bitcoin for a listing. I'll tell you now, and Bitcoin has been going like a rocket at the moment. I don't want to get into too technical. No. But if you're an Inside Ball listener and you join SwiftX, $20 of Bitcoin straight to you. Offers valid for new customers only, so if you've been a little sneaky...
Don't try and be sneaky. But get a mate to join.
New clients, the link is in the show notes. It's as simple as that. SwiftX, they're not only partners of the NRL, they're partners of Inside Ball, and Kevie and I love SwiftX. We love crypto, and guess what? We're thankful to be a part of their journey, and they can be a part of yours.
So it was a great year, 92. 93, tell us about your little story with the... So we got beaten by the Dragons in the last round, which bumped us into 5th position. It was a tough year, 93, for different reasons. But we snuck into the finals.
We were patting ourselves on the back. Our heads were as big as bloody pumpkins.
Oh, were they? Okay, I'll forget about that.
We're a bit full of ourselves.
Well, you're an honest person, so I'll take that. Yeah, I'll take that. You got injured as well in 93, didn't you? Missed a lot of games?
Yeah, I cracked my sternum. But I only missed a couple of games. But yeah, that was a bloody... through that final series, getting needles in the sternum, that was bloody ugly. I hate needles.
Yes, but right, so... We finished in 5th, and we're upstairs having a beer, which we always did at ANZ Stadium. And Wayne was starting to panic, wasn't he? He didn't think, because no team had won it.
Oh no, mate. He had the big lip down, and he was just sulking at training and all that sort of things. But there was a loudmouth bloody bookmaker, one of Alfie's mates, you know.
Ian Kane's his name.
Ian Kane, bookmaker, going off there. So I said, well, what price are we? I said, no one's ever won it from 5th. And he said, I'll give you 5s. And I said, I'll have $5,000 on it. And he went, what? And I said, yeah, 5s at 5s. Beautiful.
Because you're allowed to bet on football in those days, weren't you?
I don't think so. But no one knew.
You had
No one
$5,000 at
John's
$5.
had
And he's rung me
He
up.
took it? He took it?
Yeah, he took it. He rang me up the next day. Said, "Oh, listen, you'd had a few beers. You really want that?" I said, "No, mate. Can I have 10?" He said, "No, 5's enough." I was
Yeah.
So yeah, we did that, and it was
One of the greats. Did he collect? Did you collect?
Oh, we bloody oath. And what about a Kevie? So Kevie, I said, Kevie,
He
do you
told
want
me to train and told me
you want a
like
bit of
then.
this? Do you want a bit of this? And he said, "Oh, I don't know."
I said, I'll let you know on grand final day.
You never took it?
No, I took it. We ran out. And I said, Johnsy, I'm in, mate.
Snipped me for a little bit. Snipped me for a little bit.
But what'd you do? You built something.
Swimming pool and a pergola.
Yeah.
From the winnings.
Yeah,
mate.
back
I
in
love that. From a premiership winning, you got a swimming pool and a pergola. Mate, that's as good as it gets. Hey, Johnsy, those premierships, where do they sit with your career? Is playing for Australia, I always fascinated from professional athletes. You played for Australia, played for New South Wales, proud, but the premierships at the Bronx.
Yeah, they are. Dobbo, I think everyone says basically the same answer as what I'm about to say, but like playing for your country, like I remember when I was little, this big, sitting with my dad at 2:00 in the morning, watching the steam coming off the pommies as the
Kangaroo tours.
The kangaroo tours, and
Yeah.
you'd think, Bobby Fulton would score a try, and Graham Eady would do this, and you'd look at that and you go, oh my God, how good would that be? So it's something you always aspire. That would be the greatest thing in my life to do, And then being lucky enough to get picked with Origin, that is just, mate. The atmosphere at Origin is unlike anything.
Yeah.
Forget your test matches, your grand finals. The atmosphere when you walk onto Suncorp Stadium, you can feel that people want to eat you.
Yeah.
The sound is just bouncing
Huge.
off you, off you. You got goosebumps thinking, wow, what can I do here? And that the electric feeling, that is crazy. But to win a premiership, it's about your mates, because you don't come together for 3 weeks for an Origin series and try and do that. You come together for 2 or 3 years and grow as young men. You grow as people. You're living in each other's pocket. You're creating an atmosphere where you want to die for each other. You want to kill for each other.
Yeah.
And that's what Premiership's about. Your lifelong friends that you've grown up with and been on a special journey of, sometimes it's 2, 3, 4 years. Sometimes a kid will come in off the back where it's all been done for him and he'll play in a grand final his first year. But usually it's off the back of a nucleus of players really putting together something special, putting together an environment where everyone wants to succeed.
Yeah, certainly. Well, you loved the kangaroo tours so much so that you got some ink over there, didn't you? You got a bit of ink?
Yeah, I had a few too many drinks. Few people didn't. You got it.
I
didn't
got
you?
one, yes.
Yeah, Alf said he, like usual. Alf, it was probably his idea. Come on, we'll go and do it. And then all of a sudden we got to the tattoo place and the only one wasn't there was Alf.
Yeah.
So it was about half a dozen.
I think he had to go to meet Janine somewhere, like pick her up in the airport or something. But he's a sooker.
Yeah, we
Bloody
got
sook.
Bruce 90 put on
Bruce
the bum.
90.
But that was that was one of the best things I've ever been on, that 1990.
Kangaroo tour.
Kangaroo tour.
Yeah.
It was just so good.
Well, that's like you said. As a kid, we used to get up in the mornings and watch the kangaroos on the telly, and all of a sudden we're living the dream. You played in the last test over there, didn't you?
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
when your debut was.
Yeah, in
1990
France, yeah.
in France. How was that? Was that a great experience for you? Because I remember sitting on the side. I think I was your sandboy that day.
Yeah, I think you were the only one that didn't get a test match, weren't you?
I was, yeah. I'm a real emu. There's some of these pretend emus, but I'm the real, genuine emu.
Yeah, but you
Dobbo.
played for
I was
Australia
like-
eventually,
See,
mate.
I sucked up the bozo a bit more. He gave me a game in the last.
Was
one,
that
the last
everything
one.
you thought it would be, playing for Australia?
Oh, it was great, mate. I think it was because we were probably. I think we won pretty easily. It was.
Yeah.
It was very, very special. But I wouldn't probably put it up there in my moments of like state of origin
career.
or grand finals and that sort of thing.
Righto, mate.
So I look at you, Johnsy, and you're an unbelievable footballer, but it was probably for me, like it's your career post-match and your involvement in rugby league after football finished. Did you? And we'll get to all of it. But when you retired and when you finished, and obviously injury at the end, but did you think that you were going to go into a corporate role in rugby league? Because you obviously, with your family owning pubs, you had a business sense. You obviously knew, and this is the deepest, how to make money. You were very good with money. Away from that, did you think, I'm going to get involved in rugby league?
Mate, the part from like Wayne Bennett, I think he's been one of the biggest influences on my life. Mate, that board and the first CEO, John Rebo, they gave me an insight into what it was like to be a businessman, you know?
Yeah.
Like I left school, I went to grade 10, I didn't even finish school.
Yeah.
Right, I did a 4-year apprenticeship with Qantas and became an aircraft maintenance fitter.
Yeah.
So I had a trade behind me, but it's because
Hey, we were going to pull you up, the aircraft maintenance fitter. You used to load the luggage on and off.
I used to tighten a few nuts. don't worry.
Seriously, that's what I used to do. Load
Hang
the
a
luggage.
96 Kevin.
Aircraft engineer. Come on,
But
mate.
you are a qualified aircraft
my
engineer.
dad said, my
Yeah.
dad, because back in those days, there wasn't really everyone making a career out of football. My dad
Yeah.
said, mate, you can play first grade, I'll let you do all this, but you know, you're finishing school early, you need a trade because you're going to need something to fall back on.
Yep.
Right? So he was adamant, you can do all this, but you do 4 years of your apprenticeship and get a trade behind you, and then you can carry on, and if football happens. And then when I got the opportunity to come to Brisbane and see these powerful businessmen and see how they conducted themselves, I thought, wow, I want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
So I actually, for the last 3 years of my career, like the fourth year before I'd retired, I left Queensland, left Brisbane, I was working for Power Brewing as a brewery rep.
Right.
Not like Alan Langer and
Yeah.
Gene Miles. They were just token. They'd go and
Yeah.
if there was a
A
customer
sample of
complaint,
beer.
they'd take a carton of beer to the customer and
Yeah,
sign
do
their
that.
autographs. Now, I was actually
Trying
doing
to
a
sell
run.
and doing
I was,
the run.
Yeah, I had a car, you know. That wonderful
The
thing
old
about
white
Power
ute
Brewing,
with the power
Brewing,
sign.
like we had to have a job. Like my wage, even at the Broncos, wasn't enough to get everything going, and we didn't have a car. And when I went on that 1990 Kangaroo tour, I was wondering because I thought I'd have to give the car back. You know, I'm away for 3 months. What's my wife going to do? Bernie Power rang me up, and this is the sort of man he was. He rang me up and he said, Chris, I know you're going to be doing it a bit tough over there without your wage and that, so I'm going to pay you full-time wages while you're over there, and don't worry about the car. Let your missus have the car while we're away. And that's the sort of person that
You don't forget that when at the back end
Mate,
when you start working.
I'm getting goosebumps now thinking of
Yeah.
that because, you know, Bernie Power didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
You know, and for him to do that, I thought was just wonderful. But then, so after that, while I was playing, I was assistant marketing manager. So Shane Edwards went on to be a CEO there. He was the marketing manager, and he said, "Listen, I don't want you to work for Power Brewing anymore. Can you come and work for us, and you can be my assistant marketing manager?" So I learnt
about the business and about
I learned what goes into being a marketing manager at the club. Did that for a year, and then in the final year before I stopped playing, they promoted me to be football manager. So I was actually the football manager of the team while I was playing with the Broncos.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember
Unheard
that.
of.
So it gave me some really good skill sets and some good work ethic.
How to run a football club in the day to day. Can you? It would have been tough. Was he tough on
Oh,
you?
they used to give me shit. Like
Oh,
you
we
wouldn't
used to,
believe.
yeah, come on, mate, you forget you used to be a player, mate. Now look at you.
yeah.
But one of Johns's biggest tasks, and he did it beautifully, was to lure the great Gordon Tallis to the Broncos. Was
Did
that
you
true?
bring it?
Yeah,
Was that how you got him here? Did
Yeah,
you?
I wouldn't say I got him here. No, but I was. It was part of some
Heavily
of the
involved in-
stuff and that. Yeah, him and Anthony Mundine, we got up here.
Because
Wow.
the Super
Work
League
at that.
War, the Super
Yeah.
League War was big, wasn't it? What's your memories of this? What you were an advocate for Super League, weren't you?
Oh, mate, I was a huge advocate for it because I know we were getting ripped off. Like, all of a sudden, wages tripled and quadrupled. Like, so where was all this money going before this? It was because Kerry Packer was good mates with Ken Arthurson and John Quayle, and they negotiated the TV rights. So Kerry Packer would go in there and negotiate TV rights every year for way less than what they should have been. So when a competitor came in and said,
Said,
right,
"We're
I
gonna
think
do
these rights are worth a little bit more than this, all of a sudden Kerry thinks he can pay a bit more as well. So, you know, if that didn't happen, it was going to take a long way. Probably the game would have got to where we are now, but not as quick as it's got to where it is now.
So
You know,
Super
it
League
really,
was
it
absolute-
really,
I agree with
it
that.
really
I agree with that.
fast-tracked.
Yeah.
You know, it did a lot of damage and it really hurtful things for a lot of people. And, you know, I apologise for anything I did that made anyone get upset. But it fast-tracked where this game had to get to.
I agree with that. Can you remember? Everybody remembers it. The footy show that night. You were hijacked that night.
Oh, yeah.
Did you have any idea? Because for those who don't know, when you go to the footy show, you're all in the green room prior and everything like that. Obviously, there was a lot of friction. When you went on there, did you realise that it was going to be what it was? Because it broke down friendships and relationships.
well, it didn't, because when we got there, we got the cold shoulder off everyone. Usually we knew most of the people. We'd give them a shake and, you know, say, how you going, fatty? You know, what's going on? And
It was war.
So, so they sat us in a room by ourselves, locked the doors. So we were just in this room, no water, no anything, waiting to get out on stage. And Reeves looked at me and said, mate, this is going to be a stitch up.
Yeah.
I said, what do you mean? He said, mate, no one said hello. No one said anything. I said, oh, Reece, I don't think they will. But holy dooly, yes, it was on for young and old as soon as we sat down at the table.
Yeah, can you remember that? Like it was appalling because
I loved it. I loved it because I was so confident in what we were doing was right. And I couldn't give a hoot what they were saying because I knew it wasn't right. I knew, there's always a thing in life. There's, you get two people arguing. There's this story, there's their story, and there's a story somewhere in the middle.
Yep.
It's never usually one way or the other. There's somewhere in the middle where it should be.
Can I ask you, it came together eventually.
Yeah.
But some of the people that were horrible to you, and there was some dread. I will be honest, a lot of people said a lot of stuff about you and Reeves. Yeah. You guys didn't throw a lot of mud back the other way. No. Was there ever apologies, and was there ever a time where break? Because there was some...
Tell you where I stood, Dobbo. Every one of my... Like Jeff Carr, right?
Yeah.
He was in the thick of it, right at the forefront of it, right? He was a really good friend of mine, been my manager at, Kangaroo Tours and Australia. Never had a bad word against each other, even at the height of the war.
Yep.
Anyone I knew and were friends with, there was never any fallout.
Yep.
The only people that were really the people that I didn't know, people that I hadn't met really.
Yep.
There was never anyone saying, barring probably, I think Ray Hadley probably stepped over the line a little bit one way, and I might be guilty of stepping over the line a little bit the other way. But that was probably the only person that I had any real fallout. But as far as players are concerned, or any of my friends that I classify as friends,
never.
Yep.
Do you and Hadley ever heal?
No, I don't think we run each other's paths now.
Yeah, fair enough.
If you had your time again, would you do things differently? Would you?
I'd go harder on Hadley.
Right.
Yeah,
that's fair enough.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
So you go.
You go, mate.
Yeah. So the Super League war so the competition split, right? And then they came back together in 1998. But in that meantime, there was a new club form, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Melbourne Storm.
Well, yes.
Tell us about your role in that, because you're the CEO there.
Well, News Limited came to me and said, listen, we want you to come to Sydney and work in our football department. Whatever we're going to start doing from now, we want you to work in our football department. And I said, oh, that's great. So I'd spoken with Lisa and said, right, we're going there. And as I'd said that, John Rebo rang me and said, listen, I've got to get out because we can't, I was head of the warring party. We've got to have fresh faces in here to make this all work. He said, I've been given 30% of the Storm.
Franchise.
Was going to take 70. He said, if you want to come down, you can have 5% and you can be the first CEO. So John said to me, would you like to do that? And I thought, wow, what an opportunity to go to Melbourne, the home of the AFL, and try and put a foothold for rugby league. I thought, I cannot miss this opportunity. This is something that I couldn't have wished for more than what this is going to be able to, the opportunity that exists there to go to the bloody heartland of the AFL.
And take them on.
And put a rugby league team in there and sell rugby league to the world. It was just, about 1 minute flat, I said, yes, I'm in.
How hard was it to put a roster together? Because we're looking at the Bears at the moment. Mal's doing that. We looked at what the Dolphins...
Yeah.
Can you talk about putting the roster together?
A bit easier. We put a roster together that made the semis in our first year, which is unheard of, right? But to put a little bit of context around it, you have to look. The Western Reds folded, right, and the Adelaide Rams folded. So there was two teams that had 12 months, and both of those teams were littered with some of the best youngsters in the game. Like Brett Camorley and. Like Rodney Howe, and there was some wonderful youth that were in there that we were able to go and grab hold of, and we were supremely confident. And even the one thing is, even when we put that squad together, all the experts, all the media had us running last. Yeah, so our masterstroke was getting Chris Anderson, the coach. Yeah. I remember sitting down in his first interview, with me, and I said, Reeves said to me, listen, I don't want to be part of this interview. He said, you're going to be the CEO. You're going to be the one that's going to have to deal with him. And if the CEO doesn't deal with the coach and the coach doesn't deal with the CEO, no club's going to win anything. Yep. Right? So you have to be confident you're going to be able to work with him, and you're going to be confident you're going to have his back and he's going to have your back. Because there's nothing's ever easy getting these things up and running. So I sat down with Chris. I said, right, Chris, you're leaving Canterbury. You can stay at Canterbury. It's a family club, Bullfrog's the bloody, your father-in-law. Why do you want to come down here? And he said, I want to be a pioneer. The excitement of going down into the heartland of the AFL and being able to put a rugby league team on the map, he's saying exactly what I was thinking. And I could see the passion that he was exuding and saying, he's not coming. He didn't ask me how much am I going to pay or how many years you're going to sign me.
Or who have you got lined up?
He said, we'll put it together. He said, Theo Burgess, one of the best recruiters in the game that would work closely with Chris, I've got him. He knows every young kid in the game. We'll put together a squad. We just got to get some old heads. We've got to get a bit of this, a bit of that, make the cake, and we'll go all right. And we agreed to terms that day. Didn't even
interview
person.
Anyone else?
No.
Wow.
You had success straight away.
Yeah, straight away. Because we built, I think, the biggest reason I think that Melbourne Storm and Penrith Panthers are where they are today. Like, you'd have to say they're the two. Say Roosters in there as well, right?
Yeah.
But those two clubs have got big similarities, right? You've got a Penrith squad that's just done something that I think will never, ever be done in the game again. To win 4 premierships, to be in 5 out of 5, you know. But to win 4 premierships, mate, that's just impossible. But if you look at the background of what I was talking about in building clubs and building teams, you've got that young group that come together. I think it's Luai and bloody Liam Martin. About 5 of them were in a boarding house together, playing junior football. They brought them all together and they were living under the same roof for 5 years, you know.
So they just know each other.
And they've got Nathan Cleary's their best mate. They're kicking the football around after school, playing with them after bloody, mucking up, doing things, just staying together as a unit,
And you did that in Melbourne.
Melbourne, we had to. Every player didn't bring their parents with them. Every player didn't bring their schoolhood friends with them. Every player didn't bring their best mate. So they had to live with each other. They had to play with each other. And to this day, that culture still exists.
Yeah.
And if other clubs want to have the success of Storm or Penrith, they've got to start doing that at their own organisations.
Yeah.
And I think you'll see the better ones do. And the ones that aren't that good don't.
Why? And we're going. Why aren't you still involved in rugby league? I mean this genuinely.
Yeah, no.
I say this with respect. Everywhere you've gone, you've had success, and Kevie always says it. Everywhere Chris Johns goes is successful. You were successful at the Broncos. You were a big part of the Super League. Your businesses are successful. Melbourne, you created that. You and Reeves. Why?
Because I don't want to pay the price. Huge cost. The Storm to my family. I've got 3 wonderful daughters, right?
Yep.
And I've got 5 grandchildren coming through now, and we're as tight as ever. That we live in each other's place every night for dinner.
Yep.
I've got a wonderful family, but I neglected them for those 5 years at Melbourne Storm.
Yep.
I focused on one thing and one thing only:
the footy club.
A footy club, and made huge sacrifices.
Yep.
Second was my family, but first was the footy club.
Yep.
And I've had enough of that. And we need a young person like me, we need a young person that's got that fire in their belly that's going to make the priority. That's what they want to do, and that's where, you'll see that this year's grand final winner. I'll bet you there's some people littered in that club that are like that. It's
an interesting thing, Kev. We've never seen, but we'll probably never see it. Young blokes who are playing who want to get involved in the club and make that, because it's a leadership role. You would have antagonised a lot of blokes because you were still playing, and then once you cross over, you have to put that the coach's hat on, the CEO hat on. Blokes who you would have been talking to, they probably would have played football with you. Come on, Johnsy, we drank grog together, mate. We've done this and that, and you go, mate. No,
I've learned from the best. Like Wayne Bennett, he doesn't drink, doesn't do anything. His biggest sin is as a chocolate bar.
Yeah,
but he in a group. When everyone's having a beer, you'll think he's as drunk as the rest of you because he's just enjoying everyone's company, And barring Gordon Tallis, right?
Yeah.
I think there's not many people that you can see that will give Wayne Bennett any criticism, because he's got that wonderful thing of being fair, being fair, being honest, just telling the way it is, not trying to, half, honey it up. It's, like I just read a few of the sackings I had with the Broncos. I heard people got emails or SMSs,
Yeah, Wayne got it. Wayne got an SMS. Wayne got a voicemail.
It's not how you do business.
No, it's not how you do business.
I know we've got a bit more to go, but I just want to ask you, because Brisbane is such a powerhouse, and we've talked a lot about this, but they haven't got the results since one got. I know we lost a grand final in 23, they lost one in 15, they changed the rules because of that, they've had some opportunities. But it's not the club that it used to be. And so how do you...
with respect to that, Dobbo, respect to that, I spent 2 years, right, trying to say what I think should happen, right? And I think it's all been well documented.
Yeah.
I made a promise that when this new coach came in, I'm not going to be the reason that we're on the front page saying that disarray, Broncos old boys are doing this. It's well documented what I think should happen.
Yep.
Right? And if people don't want to listen to that, that's fine.
Yep.
It's no good me keep talking
But not about now. Not about now.
Yeah.
Is it unrealistic to think that the Broncos, and I'll ask you both that, can get back to the 92, 93s where they are the most dominant club?
They can.
Yeah.
They've got to change.
Yeah.
They can't do what they're doing now. There's got to be change.
Yeah.
And what the next person that the Bronco that comes into the Broncos, they've got to work what that change is. What that
change is. Yeah.
And implement it.
But it can definitely get back to those days.
100% it can.
Couldn't they be a Penrith?
It's all about people, Dobbo.
Yeah.
We've got the number one asset in the whole world. The number one asset in the whole world for this lovely game of NRL is Suncorp Stadium. And guess who owns Suncorp Stadium?
Who?
The members of Brisbane Broncos.
Yeah.
Not the bloody hierarchy, not the members of Brisbane Broncos.
Yeah.
And if you've got a stadium and a membership base and a supporter base like that, you can do anything.
Yeah.
You just got to get the right people.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Well, we talk
about. Can we talk about hoppies?
Yeah.
Can we just? Can we just talk about hoppies? Everything you touch turns to gold. How the bloody hell? And we should get this video up on Inside Ball, and we will put it up. Chris Johns has actually gone through the Hoppies car wash, stood there and gone through the car wash himself.
He's gone through on the bonnet.
On himself? No, he stood there. I've seen him do it.
I've sent Gordy Tallis through first to make sure there was nothing.
But how does one get into car? Like, everything you've done and you've touched has gone. How does you go, okay, I'm going to start a car wash business? Because there's been a graveyard of car wash businesses that have failed, yet you've managed to turn one into a juggernaut.
Again, lucky, I've copied a lot of things, but when I was in Melbourne, when I was coming home, I was looking, what am I going to do? And I saw a couple of car washes down there and thought, wow, this is amazing. And then there's a bloke in Sydney by the name of Anthony Zahidi.
Yeah.
And he's like, one of his car wash sites worth 300 million.
Yeah.
He's got 30. He's the godfather of car washing.
Yeah, they got one in Mossman, and it just absolutely loads up.
I went and met him.
Yeah.
And I said to him, typical me, I said, Anthony, you can do this. And he said, who are you? He said, car wash owner. He said, you're the first person in 20 years that's come in here and not tried to pinch an idea off me or do something else. You've come in here with something that I think is really going to work for me. What's your name? And we've been friends ever since. But lucky enough to talk with him and see what he did to build his empire down there and just copy and paste, do it up here.
And it's gone, and as Brisbane grows, it's just been unbelievable.
Yeah, well, there's one thing in life, I think my dad would turn in his grave if he knew I got someone to mow my lawn or bloody, do my swimming pool. Like, people are getting more and more time poor, and people are looking for, convenient ways to get things done. And, car washing, very hard to do AI at the moment.
Yeah.
So until AI comes up with a solution, we're going to be around for a bit longer.
You still want to grow? Is it still got more growth
Definitely,
in it?
mate, definitely. We've got 10 now, and we're looking to go to probably 20 and 30 over the next 5 years.
Oh, God.
Where's the next side, mate? Do you know?
Get to the nation's capital. Can you please get to Ipswich? That's what we need. We need help. You had car washes out there.
Well, yeah, we've had.
You and Drewy, you had a few out there.
We had one out there. It was great. I obviously was involved in the business early with the Hoppies car wash, but then I went to France, so I had to sort of relinquish my role there. But look, it's a great. Everyone, it's well known, isn't it?
I love it, mate.
Even on the podcast, we've given away free car washes here. Mention the Inside Ball,
and don't forget the Hoppies Express model. This new model we've got. We wash a car every 30 seconds. So there's no queuing on Saturdays. You go in there, every 30 seconds we're washing one.
Washing through. Beautiful.
Mate, Kratzmann's Caravan and RV Super Centre out of Burpengary, mate, they're big supporters of us. Where is your best trip that you've ever been to? We'll get the Kratzmann's Caravan. Where's the best trip that you've ever been to?
The best trip I've ever been in a caravan.
No, anywhere.
I know where your best the train roller. What's his
Ronnie Biggs. That was a good one there. Ronnie Biggs in
It's
Brazil.
Ronnie Biggs.
Stop it.
Yeah. Had beers with Ronnie Biggs. He wrote on a napkin. He said, "Crime doesn't pay, footy might."
Whereabouts in the world? Where's the favourite you've been everywhere?
You've done a lot of travelling.
Yeah, a lot of travelling. But I really enjoy. I love Queenstown. I reckon it's a really good. And it's only 2 hours away.
You know what? It's my favourite place in the world.
And mate, they've got best pies. What's it called?
I've never been there. So
you've never been to Queenstown?
We can't take a Kratzmann caravan to Queenstown, mate. You get it across the.
Mate, you get a
I'll tell you a
motorhome
funny
over
story
there.
about caravans.
Yeah.
One of my first little loopy ideas was at the at the Storm. We didn't have any corporate areas, so Jerry Ryan. I mentioned a competitor. I think they're mates. Jayco Caravans, right?
Yeah.
So we put caravans on the field and put VB kegs in there, and we'd have 4 different sponsors in caravans in each corner.
Because you had no corporate facilities, so you had them in there.
They were sitting in the Jayco Caravans, sucking on VBs and sausage sandwiches right on the try line.
Yeah, I remember those sitting there. That was your brainwave.
Yeah.
He's got some ideas, this bloke. We had a phone shop together as well.
No?
Yeah. Benny Elias talked you into that one, didn't he?
Yeah, Benny made billions out of it, and Kevie and I nearly lost our house.
We did. Anyway, that's another story for another podcast.
Chris Johns, thanks for being with us, mate.
Thank you.
Good on you, Johnsy.